Hey guys, tonight we're stepping straight into the choking, flower-filled dawn of the Victorian city, where being a baker isn't a cozy fairy tale profession, but a slow, dusty gamble with death. You stand in a cramped back room where the air glows white and thick, like fog caught inside a lantern. It looks harmless, almost heavenly, until you inhale. You cough once, twice, and already, the flour dust begins its quiet invasion of your lungs. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is there right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the sun, because the bread cannot wait. The city sleeps in soot and horse dung, but your oven glows like a secret sunrise. The bakery is your tiny kingdom, and flour is your snowstorm. The air feels velvety at first, little particles dancing in the candlelight as you scoop, mix, and knead. Yet each breath you take fills you with invisible knives, microscopic shards that slice their way deep into your lungs. Historians still argue whether Victorian bakers understood the full danger of flour dust. But the coughing fits, the chronic wheezing, the early graves, they must have known something wasn't right. You move rhythmically, folding dough with aching wrists. The wooden table is worn smooth by years of repetition. Every slam of dough sounds like a heartbeat against wood. Your heartbeat, steady and resigned. The rhythm is hypnotic. Even your thoughts begin to knead themselves into the dough. What will the bread be today? Hope for someone's breakfast, or another tasteless necessity. The city beyond the window is grey and indifferent. You can just make out the rumble of carts and the clop of hooves over cobblestones. Somewhere, a factory bell screams, dragging hundreds of half-awake labourers to their posts. You envy them, oddly enough. They work by day. You, however, are a creature of the night, bound to your oven's breath and the cruel ticking of the morning clock. The flour finds its way into everything. It coats your clothes, seeps into your hair, and settles in your eyelashes until your reflection looks ghostly. You laugh quietly, half mad from fatigue, and say to yourself that at least ghosts don't have rent to pay. The walls of the bakery seem to close in, heavy with heat and dampness. The bricks sweat. The air hums faintly, alive with the sizzle of steam escaping from the first loaves. In a corner, a sack of flour size as a mouse darts through a hole. You shrug. There's no room for disgust anymore. In the Victorian bakery, hygiene is an afterthought. What matters is survival. Bread is everything, yet everything about making it is deadly. The flour sacks arrive from mills caked with grime. Sometimes, the dust isn't even pure wheat. It's laced with chalk or bone ash to stretch profits. You've seen millers with fingers missing, their faces grey from years of breathing that same dust. You pause, wiping your face with the back of your hand. Sweat mixes with flour and forms a paste that clings like glue. You wonder if this is what you'll become, half dough, half man. Your lungs wheeze a rhythm that almost matches the creaking of the oven door. It's absurdly poetic, in a grim way. You could almost call it music. The oven roars, glowing orange through the iron grate. It's a living creature, hungry, temperamental, and louder than your own thoughts. You feed it wood and scraps and hope it stays satisfied. Sometimes, it belches black smoke into your face, reminding you who's in charge. You imagine it laughing at you, an ancient, fiery god demanding sacrifices. Victorian bakers often worked 18-hour shifts, with barely a few hours rest between batches. You're no exception. The sun hasn't even risen, yet your arms already tremble from exhaustion. Your body hums with that strange, jittery fatigue where even your heartbeat feels out of sync. You joke quietly. Well, at least gym memberships are free in this line of work. Your wife, or maybe it's just your memory of her, calls you to eat something. But what's the point? The smell of bread fills your nose until hunger becomes meaningless. You chew on a stale crust, the kind even rats reject, and taste chalky bitterness. Bread for the city, you murmur. Ashes for the baker. A bell rings faintly outside. Perhaps the milkman. Perhaps the undertaker. In this city, both start early. You shake your head and turn back to the bench. The dough has risen beautifully, soft and compliant beneath your calloused hands. For a brief moment, it feels almost holy, like creating life from dust. Yet, you can't ignore the irony. Dust gives life, and dust will take yours. The air thickens with warmth as dawn inches closer. Light slants through the window, cutting through flour clouds like beams through fog. For a heartbeat, the bakery looks divine. Gold dust swirling in silence, the scent of fresh bread wrapping around you like a blessing. Then you sneeze hard, and the illusion breaks. You chuckle softly, wiping your nose. So much for divinity. The door creaks open. Your apprentice stumbles in, eyes still sticky with sleep. He mutters something about rats in the storeroom. You wave him off. The boy is only 12, maybe 13, but his hands already bear scars from hot trays and knife slips. You wonder how long before he develops that same hollow cough you've carried for years. Victorian apprenticeship, after all, is a polite word for slow erosion. Outside, the first customers appear. Maids, errand boys, one harried mother with a baby bundled in rags. They hand over coins that barely glint, and you hand back warmth. The exchange feels ritualistic, almost sacred. Bread connects the living, even when it kills the makers. The city brightens. The oven cools. Your body begins to ache with the aftermath of motion, a stillness that hurts more than the work itself. You lean against the counter and close your eyes. Your chest rattles faintly. For a moment, you imagine yourself lying in a field, breathing air without flour in it. You can almost smell grass, but the fantasy fades quickly. You're still here, inside the dim, narrow bakery that hums like a furnace. And though you might despise it, part of you loves it too. There's comfort in routine, even when it destroys you. The smell of yeast, the weight of dough, the creak of wood. Each is a lullaby and a curse. A new sack of flour arrives, carried by a miller with grey eyebrows and a grin missing 2 teeth. Fresh from the mill, he says. Though you both know the word fresh is relative. He coughs into his sleeve, a wet, rattling sound. You nod solemnly, and as he leaves, you realize your own cough sounds just like his. You open the sack and the white dust erupts, like a genie from a lamp. It sparkles in the light, beautiful and deadly. You breathe it in, because you have no choice. You're a baker, you feed others, even if it means slowly consuming yourself. The day stretches, blurs. You lose track of hours. By the time evening returns, your hands are stiff, and your lungs feel lined with sandpaper. You clean the counters, brush flour from the cracks, and douse the embers of the oven. The silence afterward feels wrong, too big, too empty. You miss the noise already. You sit on a stool, bones creaking like the old oven door. Outside, laughter from a nearby tavern drifts through the night. You close your eyes again. Just for a minute, you tell yourself, maybe 2. The warmth lulls you, and as sleep pulls you under, a tiny swirl of flour escapes your breath and rises into the dim air, your quiet offering to the night. The next morning, you wake to a dry throat and a chest that feels stuffed with wool. You sit up, coughing, short, sharp barks that scrape your ribs like broken glass. A thin puff of white dust leaves your lips. You stare at it as it drifts upward in the half, light, and realize, grimly amused, that even your lungs have learned the art of baking. You stand slowly. The city outside is already awake. You can hear the clatter of wheels, the bark of vendors, the rhythmic shouts of dock workers. But you have no time for the world's chaos. You've got your own. The bakery smells faintly sweet this morning, the ghosts of last night's bread lingering like perfume. Still, something feels off. The flour looks paler than usual, unnaturally so, like snow tinted with moonlight. You dip your hand into the sack, letting it sift through your fingers. It's too smooth, almost silken. They've stretched it again, you mutter. The millers have been adding things, alum, chalk, even ground bones, to make cheap flour appear whiter and finer. The richer customers love pure white bread, thinking it's healthier, cleaner. But you know the truth: the whiter the loaf, the darker the outcome. You mix the dough anyway, because rent doesn't care about ethics. As you knead, the smell of yeast rises, comforting, earthy, honest. You close your eyes, letting it anchor you for a moment. Then the memory of a man flashes through your mind. Old Henry, a baker 2 streets over. He died last winter. They said it was consumption. The polite word Victorians used for lungs turning to mush. You remember how his hands had trembled as he lifted the last tray from the oven. You'd helped carry his coffin, lighter than a flour sack. It's easy to forget how many die this way. The city buries bakers quietly, their deaths dismissed as the cost of doing business. Historians still argue whether the government knew about the poison in bread, or merely looked the other way. Either way, every loaf you bake is a little white lie, perfect on the outside, deadly underneath. As you work your apprentice, Tommy, the sleepy-eyed boy with soot on his cheeks, watches. He asks if he can try kneading. You nod, and his small hands sink into the dough. It's a sweet sight, until he sneezes, spraying flour into the air. You both laugh, but when you see the dust shimmering in the sunlight, you stop first. It looks beautiful, like snowfall, but you know it's a slow blizzard that never melts. You move to the next task, shaping loaves. The dough feels alive beneath your palms, pulsing faintly, as if it knows what's coming. You score each loaf with a quick slash of your knife. The cuts so practiced they feel like part of your breathing. A tiny ritual of control in a world that offers little. The oven hums. You stoke the coals, shove in the trays, and close the iron door. The heat presses against your face. For a moment the air ripples and you see a vision. Flour turning to smoke, bread to ash, lungs to dust. You blink it away. Fatigue plays tricks on you, that's all. When the bread emerges, it's golden, flawless. The crust cracks with a satisfying sigh. You tear off a corner, inhale deeply, and, despite everything, smile. This, you think, is what beauty smells like, even if it kills you. Later, a customer, a middle-aged woman in a fine bonnet, complains her last loaf tasted metallic. You apologize, though you know the cause: trace amounts of lead from the millstones. The Victorian mills often used soft lead in their grinding surfaces, and small flakes slipped into the flour unnoticed. Adds flavor, you joke lightly, though your stomach twists. When she leaves, Tommy asks if bread can really make someone sick. You hesitate. Only if you eat too much, you say, forcing a grin. He grins back, trusting you. The lie lodges in your throat like a dry crumb. By afternoon, your lungs burn again. You lean against the wall, staring at the sacks, stacked high like soldiers waiting to die. The bakery is quiet except for the occasional drip from a cracked pipe and the faint hiss of cooling bread. You think of the city, its growing hunger, its greed for white bread, its ignorance of what purity costs. There's a knock at the door. It's Mr. Cray, the flour supplier, his hands blackened with soot. He brings a sample of improved flour, fine as dust, bright as ivory. You touch it, and your skin tingles unpleasantly. It's the latest blend, he says proudly. They say it keeps bread whiter for longer. You ask what's in it. He shrugs. Trade secret. You sigh. Trade secrets always mean someone else's suffering. You thank him anyway, take the sack, and as he leaves, you whisper under your breath, another coffin, another crust. Evening falls. The city's gas lamps flicker on, painting the streets in trembling amber. You step outside for air, but the air tastes no cleaner than what's inside. Coal smoke hangs low, mixing with the scent of bread until the two become inseparable. The perfume of progress, they call it. You lean against the doorframe, staring at your flour-streaked hands. The fine white dust glows under the lamplight. For a moment, it looks like you're turning to marble. You imagine your lungs, coated, heavy, pale. Doctors call it baker's asthma, though there's nothing gentle about it. It starts as a cough, becomes a wheeze, then a rattle. You've seen men gasp like dying fish by 40. Some claim they die happy, surrounded by the smell they loved. You're not so sure. Back inside, Tommy has fallen asleep near the oven, curled up like a cat. You smile faintly. The boy dreams beside the very thing that's killing him. You throw a cloth over him and sit on the flour sack nearby, rubbing your knees. The oven crackles softly, the sound almost comforting. You remember your father. He was a baker too. He used to say, "Flour gives, flour takes." You didn't understand then. Now, you do. It gives you purpose, rhythm, even a strange peace. But it also steals your breath one day at a time. Still, you keep going, because bread must rise, and people must eat. A chill runs through you, sudden and deep. You realize the window's been open, letting in the night fog. You rise to close it, and outside, you see the faint glow of other bakeries lighting up, one by one. Across the city, men like you are doing the same thing. Kneading, coughing, surviving. The thought is oddly comforting. You're all part of the same dusty constellation. You whisper a little prayer, not to God, but to the bread itself. Stay light. Stay kind. Don't kill too many tonight. The oven hisses as if answering. When you finally crawl into bed, dawn is already bleeding through the curtains. You close your eyes and dream of snow. But in your dream, it doesn't melt. It just keeps falling soft and white until the whole world looks like a bakery. And you're still there, somewhere beneath it, trying to breathe. You wake to another morning, or maybe it's still the same one. It's hard to tell anymore. The sun feels like it's been up for days, and the shadows in the bakery never seem to move. You stretch, bones cracking like old bread crusts, and glance around at the flour-coated counters. They look almost peaceful in the dim light, but you know better. Peace doesn't belong here. Today's batch will be larger. Demand has gone up. Factory workers need cheaper loaves, and your employer has discovered a new trick: whitening agents. You eye the small tin on the shelf, unmarked but glinting faintly. Inside is the secret ingredient everyone's talking about: alum, that fine white powder that makes bread look cleaner, crisper, more expensive. You tap the tin open and frown. The dust that puffs out has a sharp, mineral smell. Only a pinch, the supplier said. But you've seen what happens when a pinch becomes a handful. Bakers' hands blistering, stomachs cramping, customers fainting after supper. Still, white bread sells dreams, not truth, and dreams pay rent. You pour the alum into the dough bowl, just enough to please the eye, not enough to feel like sin. The powder vanishes instantly, swallowed by the flour like a lie too old to question. You sigh, kneading harder, as if you could press the guilt out through your palms. Historians still argue whether bakers knew exactly how poisonous these additives were. Some say ignorance, others call it denial. You prefer the latter. It's easier to sleep when you pretend the sicknesses around you are coincidence. Tommy watches from his stool, swinging his legs. "Why do we put that stuff in?" he asks. You glance at him, searching for an answer that won't crush his spirit. "Because people like their bread white," you say softly. He frowns. "But isn't brown bread just as good?" You smile, a sad, dry smile. "Better, maybe. But people don't buy what's good. They buy what looks clean." He nods slowly, not understanding yet. He will though. Everyone does. The dough resists under your hands. It's too dry. You add a splash of water, then another. The texture smooths, pliant and pale, like skin without blood. The smell of yeast rises again. But there's an undertone now. A faint metallic tang that makes your nose wrinkle. You wonder how much alum is too much. Then remember old Henry's words before he died. If it makes the bread shine, it'll make you dull. The oven growls as you open it, swallowing the trays whole. Heat smashes into your face, prickling your eyelids. For a moment, you imagine you're inside a forge rather than a bakery, hammering life out of fire. You close the door, stepping back, chest heaving. Behind you, Tommy hums a tune, off key but cheerful. It's the same tune the street vendors sing. Something about penny loaves and golden crusts. You almost laugh at the irony. The loaves are golden because you've laced them with the bones of the earth. You remember hearing once about chalk bread, bakers mixing chalk dust into flour to stretch supplies. The upper classes laughed when they heard, called it the poor man's loaf. But chalk wasn't the worst of it. Some used plaster of Paris. Others used white clay. One desperate man even used arsenic, mistaking it for starch. The customers died within days, and he was hanged for murder. You can still recall the pamphlet that called it the loaf of death. You stare at your own bread cooling on the rack. Perfectly round, perfectly white, beautiful deadly. You whisper, "Ain't that something?" You sit down for a rest, rubbing your wrists. The flour in the air catches the morning light, swirling lazily. Each mote glitters like a tiny star, a galaxy of death orbiting your head. You breathe it in any way. Habit is stronger than fear. The doorbell jingles. Mrs. Firth, your regular customer, steps in. A widow with kind eyes and a cough that never quite leaves her. "Morning, love," she says, smiling as she counts her pennies. "Got any of your nice white loaves today?" You nod, handing her one still warm from the oven. She presses it to her cheek, sighs, and says, "Smells like home." You force a grin. "Glad you like it." When she leaves, you notice a pale smear on the counter, where her hand had rested. A trace of flour, faint but glowing in the sunlight. You wipe it away, trying not to think about what else she might have carried home. The hours drag. The smell of baking fills every corner of the shop, thick and heavy. You lose track of time again. Your lungs ache, your throat burns. You take a sip of water, but it tastes like chalk. You set the cup down, staring at it, and laugh softly. Maybe everything tastes like chalk now. By midday, Tommy's energy fades. He rubs his eyes, leaving streaks of white across his cheeks. "Can we stop soon?" he asks. You nod. "After this batch." "You always say that?" Outside, the street echoes with hawkers shouting about oysters, coal, ribbons. The world feels alive, bustling, indifferent. You wonder if any of them know what's in their bread. Probably not. Maybe they wouldn't care even if they did. You recall a rumor spreading among bakers. A man in London who found a way to make bread, self-rising, using chemicals from a chemist's shop. Some called it genius. Others called it witchcraft. Historians still argue whether it was truly innovation or madness. You murmur. Either way, it changed everything. Bread no longer needed time or patience, just powder. And patience was something the Victorian world had already begun to run out of. You finish shaping the last loaf, dust your hands off, and sink into your chair. The smell is overwhelming now. Sweet, sour, metallic, alive. You tilt your head back, eyes closed, feeling the warmth radiate from the oven. It should feel comforting, but it doesn't. It feels like standing too close to a confession you can't take back. Tommy's voice breaks the silence. "Do you think bakers go to heaven?" You open your eyes, startled. He's looking up at you, sincere. You consider lying, but something in his face, the innocence, the flour freckles, makes you tell the truth. "If we do," you say slowly, that'll smell like burnt bread. He laughs, thinking it's a joke. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. When the loaves come out, you wrap them carefully, tying twine around each. Your fingers move automatically, the way they've done for years. The world outside blurs into a grey hum. You think about leaving this life, maybe moving to the countryside, finding air that doesn't taste of dust. But then you remember the rent, the debt, the customers waiting at dawn. You are chained not by iron, but by obligation. Night falls. You lock the door and lean against it, breathing hard. The bakery feels alive in the dark. Soft crackles from cooling crusts, faint whispers from settling wood. You listen, half expecting the bread itself to speak. Maybe it does. Maybe it's been trying to tell you all along that purity kills, that white isn't always clean. You take one last look around before heading upstairs to your small room. The smell follows you, clinging to your clothes, your hair, your dreams. You lie down, eyes open to the ceiling. The flour has settled on everything, a fine white snow that never melts. You smile weakly and whisper to the quiet, "Good night, my deadly angels." Then you close your eyes, coughing softly into the pillow, and drift somewhere between sleep and surrender. You wake in a fog of heat and grit, the air inside the bakery thick enough to chew. Your pillow feels like it's been dusted with flour. Maybe it has. You rub your eyes, cough twice, and the sound rattles through your ribs. The world tilts slightly as you stand. Another night gone, another day to burn. The oven waits downstairs, still holding the ghost of yesterday's fire. You step carefully down the narrow wooden stairs, each one creaking a tired greeting. The room smells of smoke and yeast, sweet and sour like old sweat. You light a candle, its tiny flame trembling against the oven's dark mouth. The shadows leap back just enough to reveal the scattered trays, the cooling racks, the dented tin molds, your kingdom of labor and ash. You start the morning ritual, open the vent, stoke the coals, stretch your back until something pops, and pray it was supposed to. The heat bursts to life, licking your face. The oven's roar is both familiar and menacing, a hungry beast you've learned to appease but never trust. It's funny how the sound never changes. It's a low, steady thunder that seems to echo in your bones. The fire glows orange through the grate, and you swear you see shapes moving in it. Faces, hands, maybe memories. Sometimes you think the oven remembers more about your life than you do. Tommy shuffles in, yawning. He's wearing his shirt inside out again. You point but don't scold. He's still a boy, still dreaming in daylight. You hand him a scoop and motion toward the flour sacks. He gets to work silently, his movements clumsy but earnest. You can tell by his red eyes that he didn't sleep much. Neither did you. There's no proper schedule anymore, just cycles of heat and hunger. You bake until your head buzzes, then collapse for an hour or two, only to start again. The neighbors joke that bakers live like ghosts, awake when others sleep, fading when others rise. As you knead the first dough, your palms sting. The skin there has thinned, cracked, healed, cracked again. You barely feel it anymore. Your muscles remember what to do long after your mind stops caring. Push, fold, turn, repeat. The heat intensifies, turning the air syrup thick. Sweat runs down your back, leaving pale trails through the flour dust clinging to your skin. You wipe your forehead with your sleeve, which only spreads the paste. The oven door clangs open. A wave of breathless warmth surges out, wrapping around you like a suffocating hug. "Careful, lad," you mutter as Tommy approaches with the tray. His hands tremble slightly. You steady him, guide the loaf into the glowing belly of the oven, and close the door. The roar softens to a low, contented rumble. Victorian bakers, you recall, were notorious for their endurance. 18-hour shifts weren't uncommon. Some slept standing up, leaning on the counters between batches. You've done it yourself. Half, dreaming while shaping dough. waking to find fingerprints pressed into it like fossils. Historians still argue whether bakers were more exploited or more addicted to the rhythm, the heat, the quiet power of feeding a city that never thanked them. Tommy breaks the silence. "Do you ever get used to it?" he asks. You laugh weakly. "To what? The heat?" He nods. "No," you say, shaking your head. "You just forget how cold feels." That gets a small grin out of him. He's a good kid. You hope he doesn't stay long enough to become like you. Eyes ringed with soot, lungs lined with ash. The day drags. The fire grows greedier. The air hums. You move in slow circles between the table and the oven, body and machine blending into one rhythm. The city outside fades away. Here, there is only dough, fire, and breath. Your mind wanders. You think about the last time you saw the river. Years ago. Maybe. The air there had tasted of iron and fish, not dust. You miss it. You imagine yourself by the water, watching steam rise from the surface as morning breaks. A foolish dream, maybe, but dreams are all that keep you sane. Tommy calls your name. You blink, startled. The loaves are ready. He opens the oven door and flinches as the heat rushes out. The smell that fills the room is intoxicating. Golden crust, bubbling yeast. Faint bitterness from the charred edges. You both stand there, breathing it in. "That's heaven," Tommy murmurs. You smile faintly. "That's sweat and luck, lad." You lift one loaf carefully, the crust singing faintly as it cools. You tap the bottom. Hollow, perfect. Another day's proof of life. The customers start arriving. Factory workers, mothers, errand boys. They chatter about wages, strikes, and gossip while clutching their bread like treasure. You nod politely, make change. Thank them for their loyalty. Each coin clinks on the counter like punctuation in a long, tired sentence. By noon, the heat becomes unbearable. The ceiling sweats. The window fogs. You strip off your waistcoat and stand in your undershirt, chest gleaming with sweat. Your breathing grows shallow. You take a sip of water and feel it boil on your tongue. Tommy fans himself with a flour scoop. "It's like standing inside the sun," he groans. You chuckle. "At least the rent's cheaper." A soft pop from the oven interrupts your laugh. A tray shifting, or maybe something cracking. You peer inside. A small flame licks at the edge of a loaf. "Damn," you hiss, reaching for the peel. As you pull it out, the crust breaks, scattering embers that dance briefly before dying. For a moment, it's beautiful, like watching tiny stars fall. Then the smell hits burnt sugar, scorched dough. You cough again. You set the blackened loaf aside. Waste of flour, waste of time. Still, you can't bring yourself to throw it away. Every ruined loaf feels personal, like a failed heartbeat. By late afternoon, you've lost count of the hours. Your hands move without orders. You hum a tune, the same your father used to sing, a simple rhythm to match the kneading. You remember his face, flushed red from heat, his hair turning grey with flour before its time. He died one morning mid-shift, leaning over the oven like he was listening to it whisper. They said his heart gave out. You think maybe it was something else. Too much breathing, too little living. You glance at Tommy again, still working quietly. You want to warn him, to tell him to run before his hands forget how to rest. But he looks so proud shaping his loaves, so certain that this small, warm world is worth the sweat. You let him be. Outside, thunder rolls distantly. Rain begins to tap against the windows, soft at first, then harder. The sound is soothing, a rare kindness. You step to the doorway, watching as puddles form in the cobblestones. Steam rises where raindrops hit the still, hot pavement. The city glows dimly, gas lamps flickering against the storm. You take a deep breath of rain air. Cool, damp, shockingly clean. It burns your lungs in the best way. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, you feel awake, alive. The thunder cracks again, and you smile. Even heaven needs a wash, you mutter. Tommy joins you at the door, holding a half-eaten crust. Do you think the rain ever reaches inside? He asks. You shake your head. No, lad. The bakery keeps its own weather. The night falls early. Dark clouds blotting out the last of the light. You light another candle, its flame barely holding against the draught. The bakery glows in soft gold, shadows flickering across the walls. You sit on your stool, watching the oven's dying fire. It breathes slower now, the same way you do. You think about how many nights have looked like this. How many more might? You remember every loaf you've baked, every burn, every cough. You wonder if it was worth it, to feed others while starving for rest. Tommy snores softly in the corner, curled beneath a flour sack. You smile again, faintly. You reach out, run your hand through the air, stirring a small cloud of flour that drifts lazily in the candlelight. It looks like snow, or maybe ashes. You can't tell anymore. You whisper, "Good night, fire." The oven flickers once, as if answering. The candle sputters. The room breathes. And as your eyes grow heavy, you let yourself sink into the warmth, the hum, the strange comfort of your deadly devotion. Morning doesn't come gently anymore. It creeps in like a thief. Pale light leaks through the cracks in the shutters, turning the flour dust in the air into floating ghosts. You blink awake to the smell of cooling ash and something faintly sweet. Molasses, maybe, or the ghost of burnt dough. Your throat feels raw. Your lungs ache from breathing fire all night. The city outside is already awake. You can hear the distant rumble of wheels on cobblestone, the shrill calls of vendors, the clatter of milk cans. Somewhere, a church bell tolls 6 times. Each note feels like a reminder another day, same heat, same hunger. You rise slowly, joints popping like old floorboards. The bakery feels smaller each day, as if the walls are drawing closer, closing you into the oven's orbit. You touch the doorframe out of habit, worn smooth where your hand always lands, and whisper a quick, half-forgotten prayer. Not to God, exactly. To the fire. To survival. Tommy is still asleep in the corner, his breath soft, his face streaked with flour. You almost envy him. He dreams of things beyond these walls. You can see it in the way his fingers twitch. You want to let him rest, but there's work. Always work. You nudge him gently with your boot. "Up, lad." He groans, rolls over, and mumbles. "It's still dark. So's the dough if we don't feed it." You reply. He laughs weakly and pulls himself up, rubbing his eyes. You both move without speaking for a while, lighting lamps, checking the coals, preparing the next batch. The routine feels like a heartbeat, steady, necessary, unthinking. The oven needs coaxing today. The fire is sluggish, still sulking from the rain. You kneel, open the vent wider, and breathe in the damp scent of wood and smoke. You strike the flint again and again until sparks catch. When they finally do, the fire leaps alive, hungry and impatient. You feed it scraps, kindling, old bread trays. It crackles and sighs as if remembering you. As the warmth spreads, so does the familiar dizziness. It's not just exhaustion. It's something deeper. The heat seeps into your skull, numbing thought. You find yourself whispering to the flames like an old friend. There you go. Easy now. Tommy watches you from the table, his face pale in the firelight. You talk to it, he says quietly. You smile. It listens better than most folk. He doesn't argue. Maybe he understands. Maybe he's beginning to. The dough is ready, soft, elastic, warm beneath your hands. You shape it into neat loaves, each one identical and unique, all at once. The smell of yeast and sweat fills the room. You catch your reflection in the window, a ghost in an apron, skin powdered white, eyes sunken. You look both ancient and unfinished, like a statue carved from smoke. A sudden knock startles you. You freeze, hand mid-air. The knocks come again, louder this time. You wipe your hands on your apron and open the door. It's a woman, older, thin, her shawl soaked from the drizzle. She holds out a coin in her trembling hand. "1 loaf, sir." Just one. You glance at the tray. They're still raw, pale and rising. Not ready yet, you tell her. Her eyes flick to the oven, then back to you. I can wait. You nod and gesture to a chair. She sits quietly, her eyes fixed on the fire. You can see the faint tremor in her fingers as she warms them. There's something sacred about her stillness. Like she's praying without words. When the loaves finally come out, she stands and breathes in deeply. You hand her one, still steaming. She presses it to her chest, tears glinting in the light. "Bless you," she whispers and leaves. You watch her disappear into the morning mist. For a moment, the world feels softer, lighter. Then the heat presses down again, and the feeling fades. By midday, you're drenched. The sweat stings your eyes, but you barely notice. Your body moves on instinct now, cutting, shaping, stacking, turning. The rhythm is trance-like. Each motion follows the next with the precision of habit and the numbness of devotion. Tommy hums a tune as he works, something cheerful and out of place. The sound cuts through the heat like a cool breeze. You smile despite yourself. "Keep that up, and the loaves might start dancing." He grins. "Better than us collapsing." Outside, the storm from yesterday has left puddles glimmering in the cobbles. The air smells faintly of wet soot and bread crust. The city feels washed but not clean, just dampened chaos. You step outside for a moment of air, though it's heavy and thick with chimney smoke. Across the street, a newspaper boy shouts the headlines, "Factory fire in the East End. Dozens dead." You look away quickly. The word, fire, tastes different in your mouth than it does in theirs. To them, it's tragedy. To you, it's life. When you return, Tommy is staring at the oven. You follow his gaze. The flames seem different. Too bright. Too high. For a moment, you swear they form the shape of a man. Arms stretched. Face hidden. You blink, and it's gone. But your heart hammers. "Did you see that?" Tommy whispers. "Just the heat." You say, though your voice cracks. It plays tricks. But later, when he's gone to fetch water, you kneel beside the oven again. You whisper, "If you're still in there, I'm sorry." The fire pops, sending a spark toward your hand. You don't flinch. You've learned its language too well. Its warnings, its temper, its silence. Night returns before you realize the day is gone. The loaves are cooling. The coins are counted. The room hums with the quiet of completion. You sit by the dying fire, feeling its pulse slow. You think of all the hands that have kneaded dough before yours. All the lungs that have filled with smoke. All the names lost to heat and hunger. There's a kind of holiness in that. A lineage of labor, bound by sweat and silence. Tommy snores again, his head on the table. You smile faintly and toss your apron aside. The air cools, slowly. The shadows stretch. You whisper to the dark, not sure if you mean it for the fire, for yourself, or for the boy. Tomorrow, maybe we rest. But even as you say it, you know you won't. The oven flickers once, like a heartbeat, and the night holds its breath. The next night begins before the last one ever ends. You never really stop working. Just drift in and out of the same loop. Like dough rising and falling, until the days blur together like smudged fingerprints. The bell above the shop door rattles now, and then the city breathes outside, and your body keeps moving even when your mind wants to sleep. You're barely aware of the hour when it happens. The first shout, then another, a low, hungry roar swelling somewhere in the street. You glance at Tommy, whose flour-dusted face freezes mid-motion. The sound grows louder, closer, until it's no longer voices, but a single body of anger. Men and women pounding on shutters, crying out for bread. Bread riots again. You knew they were coming. Everyone did. The price of wheat has climbed higher than a chimney sweep's ladder, and the poor are starving while the rich sleep on feather beds. You remember what the paper said last week. Disturbances in Manchester. Bakeries looted. Mills torched. You tried not to think about it, but now it's here, banging on your door. Should we lock up? Tommy asks. You shake your head slowly. If they're hungry enough, wood won't stop them. He swallows, looking at the ovens still glowing faintly orange. The smell of warm crust fills the air, sharp and inviting. The wrong scent at the wrong time. You step toward the door, heart thudding. You can almost feel the desperation on the other side, raw and human. When you lift the latch, the noise floods in, the shuffle of feet, the hiss of whispers, the clatter of stones against cobblestones. A man steps forward, his coat torn, his eyes wild. You got bread. You nod. A few loaves. Then hand them over. Someone yells from behind him. A woman's voice follows. They charge us half a week's wage for sawdust and chalk. You feel the truth of it in your gut. You've seen bakers mix alum and bone ash. Stretch flour with whatever they can find. You've done it yourself, sometimes, when the owner insisted. It's survival, but tonight survival looks like theft. You hold up your hands. No one's robbing anyone. Take what's baked, leave what's not. That's all I ask. There's a moment. A fragile pause where the world could tip either way. Then the man nods, steps forward, and takes 2 loaves from the tray. Others follow, quieter now, as if the air itself has softened. Tommy exhales. That could have gone worse. You smile faintly. It still could. When the crowd disperses, you notice something strange. A boy, no older than 12, standing by the door. He doesn't take any bread, just stares at the shelves. His hands are shaking. Go on, lad. You say gently. Take one. He looks up. It's not for me. It's for my mum. She can't eat much anymore. You nod and hand him a smaller loaf. The one that didn't quite rise right. He clutches it to his chest like treasure. Thank you, he whispers, then disappears into the fog. The silence that follows feels heavier than the shouting did. You close the door and lean against it, letting your body sink into the wood. The oven hums softly, indifferent. Tommy breaks it with a question. You ever think it's all pointless? All this work, just to keep people alive another day? You think for a moment. Maybe that's the point. He nods slowly, eyes on the dying fire. Historians'll probably say this was about politics or prices. He murmurs. But really, it's just hunger, isn't it? You almost laugh. You've gone philosophical on me. He grins weakly. Lack of sleep will do that. Outside, you can hear the city settling again. The echo of footsteps fading into the night. The slow return of calm. Somewhere, a constable's whistle pierces the quiet, followed by the rattle of a cart. You peer through the window. A few blocks away, you see smoke rising, dark. Ugly plumes curling against the moonlight. Not from your bakery, thank God, but someone else's luck ran out. The smell of burning bread rides the air, sharp and sweet. You close the shutters tight. By dawn, you're back at the bench, hands deep in dough, pretending none of it happened. But every scrape of the kneading trough feels different now. The wood creaks like a protest. You can still see faces in the flour dust. Open mouths, hollow eyes, the boy with the trembling hands. Tommy works quietly beside you. Once, he hums a tune, but it dies halfway through. Even the fire crackles softer, as if ashamed. You try to distract yourself by talking. Did I ever tell you about the riots of 35? You ask. My father's shop was nearly burned to the ground. They said bakers were hoarding grain. He swore he wasn't, but truth didn't matter then either. Tommy listens. What happened? He gave away every loaf he had, then starved for a week. Tommy winces. Did it help? You shrug. Helped the others, I suppose. Not him. You don't mention that you're not sure whether your father was noble or foolish. Maybe both. As the sun rises, you open the door again. The street looks the same, puddles glinting, smoke curling, the faint buzz of morning markets. But something underneath has shifted. The air feels charged, uncertain. People walk faster, speak quieter. You sell a few loaves, trade a few smiles. But when one woman hands you a copper coin, you notice her palms, red and blistered, like she's been grabbing hot pans. She sees your stare and says simply, "Wasn't me." Was trying to save someone's bread from the fire. You nod, unsure what to say. Later, when the shop empties, you find yourself thinking about her words. Saving someone's bread. There's something oddly noble in it. Fighting flames not for money, but for something that smells like comfort, like home. You realize that's what bread really is, a fragile piece of hope. The day drags on. You and Tommy take turns resting. Though resting mostly means staring at the ceiling and pretending to dream. When night creeps back in, you sit by the oven again. The old ache returning to your lungs. You close your eyes and imagine the city outside. The same streets that screamed for food now sleeping in uneasy silence. The thought hits you like a whisper. They'll be back. Hunger doesn't end with morning. You stroke the soot, stained brick beside you. It's warm, pulsing faintly, almost like skin. "We'll be ready," you murmur. The oven doesn't answer, but the glow deepens, steady and alive. Maybe it's your imagination. Or maybe, in some way, the fire really is listening. You wake to an odd smell. Not the usual mix of yeast, soot, and sweat. But something sharper, sour and metallic. You sit up, blinking through the dawn haze, and realize it's coming from the cooling rack. The loaves look wrong. Not burnt, not spoiled, just strange. A faint green shimmer clings to their crusts, glinting where the early light hits. Tommy notices it first. "They're glowing," he says, voice small. You frown, step closer, and touch one. Warm, damp. Your fingers come away dusted with a faint, powdery residue. "Could be mold," you mutter. "Or the flour went bad." Tommy shakes his head. Mold doesn't shine. He's right. It doesn't. You lift the loaf, turning it in your hands. The light shifts, the hue deepens, almost emerald now. You feel the hairs on your neck rise. It looks beautiful in a way that beauty shouldn't exist here, among soot and grease and exhaustion. You cut it open with the bread knife. The inside is pale and soft, but streaked through with faint green veins, like marble. You both stare. Tommy whispers. "Same as always," you say. "Flour, salt, yeast, water. Nothing else." A pause, then, almost jokingly, "Maybe the oven's possessed." You grin, but your stomach twists. Historians still argue whether stories like this ever happened. The so-called green bread of the Victorian city. Some blame it on copper pans, others on mold or adulterated alum. A few say it was arsenic, the same poison used in wallpaper and children's toys. Whatever the truth, those loaves became infamous in whispers and coroner reports. And here you are, staring at one. You take another sniff. Sharp, like metal filings and vinegar. Definitely wrong. You wrap the loaf in cloth and set it aside. "Don't sell these," you tell Tommy. "Not until we know." He nods, uneasy. But later, when the morning rush begins, when hungry hands pound on the door again, when mothers beg and the shelves sit nearly empty, those loaves look less like danger and more like mercy. You hesitate. Hunger wins. By midday, they're gone. You try not to think about it. You scrub the counter, sweep the floor, feed the fire. You tell yourself it's probably harmless. Probably. But every creak of the door, every cough outside, sends a chill through your spine. That night, you can't sleep. The air feels too still. Even the fire seems to smolder quieter than usual. You sit by it, staring into the glow, until a soft knock breaks the silence. You open the door to find the same woman from a few days ago, the one with the trembling hands. But she looks different now. Paler, her eyes red-rimmed. She's holding the green loaf. "It made us sick," she says softly. My husband. He can't get up. You freeze. How long ago did he eat it? Last night. You take the loaf from her, stare at it again under the lamplight. The color seems deeper, almost pulsing. I'll make this right? You whisper, though you don't know how. She nods once, then walks away into the fog. When you close the door, Tommy is watching. What was it? He asks. You hesitate. I don't know, but I think we killed someone. The words hang there, heavy as bricks. The fire pops once, a spark leaping onto the floor. You stomp it out, heart pounding. You decide to test the oven. Maybe the bricks are contaminated, or maybe something seeped in through the smoke vents. You scrape at the blackened stone, finding traces of green even there. Copper, maybe. You say aloud, trying to sound certain. From the tools. Tommy nods slowly. You think the whole batch was bad? Maybe not all, but enough. The next morning, rumors ripple through the street. People whispering about the glowing loaves, about the baker who cursed his bread. A constable stops by, asks questions you barely answer. He eyes the oven suspiciously, writes something down, and leaves with a warning. If anyone else dies, you'll hang for it. You don't sleep again for 2 days. When you finally doze, you dream of bread that breathes, of loaves that open like mouths and exhale green dust into the air. You wake coughing, throat raw, lungs tight. Tommy's asleep beside the oven, clutching his blanket like a shield. You envy his youth, how he still believes in morning. You spend the next hours scrubbing every surface. You throw out pans, clean the flue, burn the old rags. You even whisper a half prayer, though you're not sure who it's for. By the end, the air smells of ash and vinegar, and your hands are raw. The green is gone. At least, you can't see it anymore. But something inside you has shifted. You start noticing colors, where there shouldn't be any faint glimmers on the walls, a shimmer in the flour dust, an oily gleam on the water's surface. Maybe it's the light. Maybe it's your eyes. That evening, a customer asks why your loaves are smaller now. You tell her flour's dearer. The market's thin. She frowns and mutters, not like before. You want to tell her before was poison. You want to shout it, but instead, you just smile. That's the strange truth of your trade. People trust bread. They'll forgive anything if it smells like comfort. When you finally sit down, exhaustion dragging you under, you think about that sick man. Whether he's alive, whether he forgave you, whether he even knows your name. You picture the green shimmer fading from his breath. You picture the fire inside your oven burning it away. And for once, you hope the fire's hungry enough to eat what you can't. You learn to keep quiet after that. In a city that never stops whispering, silence becomes your safest trade. Every knock, every cough in the alley feels like a question you don't want to answer. By the next week, the green bread. Talk fades into rumor, then into superstition. Some say it was witchcraft. Others blame spoiled yeast or rats in the flour bins. You let them. The less they know, the longer you breathe free air. Inside, though, you feel it, the change. Not in the bread, but in you. Your skin itches where the flour clings. Your nails are tinted faintly grey, your breath shallow. You cough at night, quietly, so Tommy doesn't wake. He's still bright, somehow. Whistling in the mornings, joking with the customers, inventing silly names for the loaves, the big sleepy, the runt, the royal belly. You almost laugh. Almost. But in the quieter hours, when the shop closes and the city hum drops low, you both talk. Little things, shared under the hum of the dying fire. Ever think about leaving? He asks one night. Every morning, you say. Why don't you? You look at your hands, cracked, white, trembling. Because I wouldn't know what to do if I wasn't needing. He chuckles softly. Could join the Navy. Or sell flowers. You grin. Wouldn't suit the lungs. The laughter dies quickly, replaced by the crackle of the fire. You both listen to it breathe. Across town, someone sneezes, a faint echo through thin brick. The streets carry sound like water. You can almost hear conversations from windows away, couples arguing. Children crying, dogs barking at shadows. It's a strange kind of community, built on distance. You think back to when you started this job, years ago. The master baker back then had a saying, "You don't bake bread, you bake yourself into it." You used to think it was poetic. Now it feels like prophecy. The air in the bakery carries everything you've ever been. Your sweat, your mistakes, your dreams. The flour dust floats and glows under the lamplight like tiny stars. And you realize you're breathing in the same particles you exhaled yesterday. A closed loop of labor. One evening, a man from another bakery visits. He's older, his apron stiff with soot. He brings a small bottle, unlabeled, filled with clear liquid. "For the flour mites," he says, placing it on the counter. A few drops keeps them out. You unstopper it and sniff. It burns your nose. Smells like vinegar and death. He grins. "Good. Means it works." You thank him, though you're not sure if you'll use it. After he leaves, Tommy picks up the bottle. "What if that's what made the bread green?" "Then we'll die well preserved," you mutter. You don't throw it out, though. You tuck it behind the spice jars, next to the little tin of alum you still use when the flour's too coarse. That night, you dream again of color. Only now it's not green, it's blue. The oven glows faintly azure. The loaves hum like tuning forks. And every exhale fills the room with light. You wake sweating, heart hammering, the smell of copper thick in your throat. When you tell Tommy about it, he laughs. "You're breathing too much of that dust, old man." He's right, probably. The air's thick enough to chew. Later that week, another baker's apprentice drops by, a wary kid with ink on his hands. He leans on the counter and says, "You hear about Bill from Whitechapel?" You shake your head, dead. Lungs turned black as coal. Doctor said it was the flour dust. Tommy goes pale. You keep kneading. "Dust kills slower than hunger," you say quietly. But that night, when the fire burns low, you can't shake the image of black lungs. You imagine your own, caked, brittle, lined with soot. You wonder if the heat has cooked them already. Tommy breaks the silence again, his voice softer now. "What happens to us, do you think, after this life?" You smile faintly. "We're turned to dust. Easier to sweep up that way." He laughs, but it's shaky. You joke too easy about dying. You shrug. When you bake for long enough, death just smells like warm crust. You both fall quiet. The only sound is the faint hiss of cooling loaves and the creak of the oven settling. The next day, a woman brings you a small gift, a jar of jam. "For kindness last week," she says. You thank her and promise to share it with Tommy. That night you do. The jam tastes of strawberries and soot, but it feels like joy anyway. For a few moments, the world softens. You joke about owning a cafe one day, about baking only on Sundays, about sleeping like rich men do, without flour under their nails. But even dreams can turn stale. Within the hour, you're coughing again, and Tommy's face looks too pale in the lamplight. You glance at the fire, now a thin orange line, and say quietly, "You ever hear of the ghost bakers?" He raises a brow. "No. They say some bakers never stop working, even after death. Folks hear them kneading dough in empty shops. The smell of warm bread in places long closed." Tommy smirks. "That's grimly comforting." You grin. Means the afterlife's well fed. He laughs again, and for a heartbeat, the sound makes you forget the cough, the dust, the fear. When he finally drifts off to sleep, you sit a while longer, staring at the tiny motes floating in the light. Each one a fragment of everything you've made, everything you've breathed. You hold your hand out and watch them land on your skin, And for a moment, you wonder if this is how eternity feels. Weightless, silent, and always in motion. You always knew the ovens demanded a price, but you thought skill could protect you. That was before the boy burned. It happens fast, as these things do. A rush order from the factory owners. 200 loaves by dawn. The shop hums with panic, the air thick enough to choke. Tommy handles the mixing while young Will, the new apprentice, wrestles trays of dough into the fiery mouths of the ovens. He's eager, clumsy, desperate to impress. You remember being that way once. A shout, then a crash. Metal clatters, bread spills, and the air fills with a hiss like a demon breathing. Will's sleeve catches a coal ember. Before you can move, the fabric blooms in flame. You're there in seconds, beating the fire out with your apron. The smell of burnt cloth and skin turns your stomach. Will screams once, then goes silent. Tommy grabs a bucket, sloshes water across the floor, steam hissing like snakes. The oven roars on, indifferent. You sit beside the boy after it's done. His arm is blistered raw. You send Tommy to fetch the doctor, though you know how that will go. The doctor will come, shake his head, and say something about infection. Then he'll leave a bill. When Tommy returns, face white and empty-handed, you already know. The doctor's busy. Always is. So you do what bakers have always done. You improvise. Flour to dry the wound, bread to feed the pain away, and prayer to fill the silence. That night, the bakery feels different. The air heavier, the walls too close. You keep hearing the boys scream in the hiss of the ovens, seeing his face in the glow of the coals. You think about all the other apprentices who've passed through, half fed, half awake, chewing crusts between shifts. You remember their names, though you never meant to. In the morning, Will's mother comes. She stands in the doorway, wrapped in a shawl too thin for October. Her eyes flick to the bandaged arm, then to you. She doesn't say anything. You try, but words don't work here. So you give her bread, still warm, still soft. It's all you have. When she leaves, Tommy says quietly, "We should stop taking apprentices." You nod, but you both know you won't. The work demands hands, always more hands. Days blur again. The ovens need feeding. The customers need loaves. The city doesn't care who bakes them. But sometimes, at the edge of sleep, you hear something. The faint sound of footsteps where no one walks. The scrape of dough against wood. The whisper of someone turning loaves in an empty kitchen. Tommy hears it too. Think that's him? He asks one night. You shrug. Could be any of us. He laughs softly, though it's not really funny. You ever think we'll get out of here? You glance toward the window. Outside, the fog presses close, thick and silver. Maybe. But I don't think the flour lets go easy. Later, when you clean the workbench, you notice a handprint in the flour. Small, clear, like it was pressed there moments ago. You wipe it away before Tommy sees. The next morning, a city inspector stops by. He wears a bowler hat and a smug grin. "There's talk," he says, tapping his ledger, "of unsafe working conditions. You understand." You nod. He eyes the ovens, the cracked ceiling, the tired faces. Then he closes the book. "Keep the loaves cheap," he says. "And I never saw a thing." He leaves with 2 fresh rolls in his pocket. You watch him go, the smell of smoke following behind. That night, Tommy doesn't joke. He just sits, staring into the flames. "We're ghosts already," he says finally. You don't argue. The truth doesn't need words anymore. You turn back to the dough, stretching, folding, pressing. It sticks to your palms like memory. And as the firelight flickers across the walls, you could swear the flour in the air moves on its own, swirling gently, as if needing something unseen. The noise comes first, not the soft clatter of dough hooks, or the rhythmic thump of kneading, but a grinding metallic roar that never sleeps. You feel it through the soles of your boots, before you even see the machines. The new bakery down the street, the steam marvel, as the newspapers call it, has opened its iron lungs, and London won't ever sound the same again. You stand in your doorway, hands white with flour, and watch the smoke crawl into the sky. Someone tells you the owner can bake 500 loaves an hour. 500. You can't even imagine that number, not when every loaf you touch still feels like a heartbeat. Inside your own shop, the silence feels heavier. The ovens crackle quietly, their flames almost shy. The dough rests under Lennon, like a patient waiting for bad news. Tommy leans against the counter, squinting through the window at the rising factory stacks. "We're done for," he says, half laughing. "How can hands beat iron?" You don't answer. The truth sits in your chest like a stone. When the first delivery cart from the steam bakery passes your street, you smell it. The bread. But something's wrong. It's too clean, too even, too perfect. You break off a crust, taste it. It's bread, yes, but soulless, like a photograph of food. The customers, though, don't care. They just see the price. Half of what you charge, baked by a machine that never sleeps. By the next week, your queue shrinks. By the next month, it's gone. You work nights now, mostly for pride. The city sleeps while you still roll dough the old way, whispering little insults at the machines like charms against progress. Can't even sweat. You mutter, slamming a lump of dough against the board. Tommy chuckles, but it's a tired sound. Then comes the salesman. Slick hair, shiny boots, smelling faintly of oil and arrogance. He says he's selling mechanical mixers. Claims they'll save your arms, your time, your life. You'll never need again, he boasts. That's the problem, you say. He doesn't understand. People like him never do. The newspapers join in, praising the march of industry. "Bread for every belly," one headline crows. "Steam bakeries feed the empire," another shouts. You read them by candlelight, the edges of the paper curling near the flame, and wonder when progress started tasting so bitter. One evening, Tommy brings news. Old Mr. Pritchard's bakery shut down, couldn't pay rent. You remember Pritchard. His laugh, his crooked mustache, the way his loaves looked like clouds that got lost on earth. Gone now. Another oven cold. Historians still argue whether the industrial bakeries saved lives or stole souls. They fed thousands, yes. But they also erased hundreds of craftspeople like you. Men and women who shaped the city one loaf at a time. You start visiting the steam bakery sometimes, just to look. From the alley, you can see rows of machines lined like soldiers, gears grinding, pistons hissing. Workers feed dough into the mouths of monsters, the air thick with iron and yeast. No laughter, no chatter, just motion. Relentless and grey. Tommy asks why you keep going. You tell him it's curiosity, but really it's grief. You want to understand what killed you. One night, rain pours hard enough to turn the flour in your apron into glue. You wander through puddles toward the factory. The windows glow gold, and the hum of machinery fills your chest like a heartbeat that isn't yours. You slip inside when no one's looking. The heat hits first, different from your oven's warmth, more chemical, less human. The machines gleam, wet with oil and condensation. Dough slithers down metal chutes, spat out as identical loaves. Not one of them has fingerprints. A foreman spots you. You lost. He barks. You shake your head. Just wanted to see. He smirks. See the future. You look around. If this is it, you say, I think I'll stay in the past. Back home, you light the ovens again. You knead until your shoulders burn. You bake until dawn. The bread is uneven, crusty, alive. You give some away to your neighbors, not for money but for memory. A woman bites into a loaf and closes her eyes. Still warm, she says softly. My mother's bread never was. For a moment, the noise of the city fades. The factory smoke drifts higher, and your little shop glows faintly against the dark. Small, stubborn, human. But even as you shape the next loaf, you know the machines will win. Progress always does. And still, your hands move. Because they don't know how to stop. They arrive on a grey morning. 3 men in bowler hats, each carrying a notebook, and the faint air of someone who has never lifted a sack of flour in his life. You're halfway through a batch when they darken your doorway, their polished shoes already dusted white by the floor. Bread inspection, the tallest one says. New purity laws. You sigh and step aside. The ovens hiss behind you, the heat wrapping around your spine like a warning. Tommy wipes his hands on his apron and mutters, "Guess they're here to save the Empire from crusty loaves." The inspectors walk with the swagger of men who believe paperwork can solve hunger. They tap counters, sniff the dough, write notes. One picks up a loaf and frowns, as if it has personally insulted him. "This one's too dense," he says. "Could indicate contamination." You glance at him. "Could indicate craftsmanship." He doesn't smile. They never do. These new bread laws are supposed to protect the public. No more alum. No chalk. No dangerous whiteners. The newspapers celebrate. But every baker in the city knows the truth. The fines are heavier than flour sacks, and the rules make survival almost impossible. One of the inspectors points to the stack of ingredients by the wall. "Is that alum I see?" You shake your head. Bicarbonate. The safe kind. He sniffs it suspiciously, like a man who's never trusted a kitchen. Might need to test it. Tommy leans close to you, whispering, "Bet they'll test it right into their pockets." He's not wrong. The inspectors leave with 2 loaves tucked under their arms, and a warning about record keeping deficiencies. You'll get a notice next week, probably a fine the week after. When they're gone, you exhale. The bakery feels smaller, the air thicker. The bread laws were meant to stop bakers from poisoning the people. Ironically, they might just starve them instead. Historians still argue whether these reforms were genuine progress or just political theatre. Some say they saved countless lives by ending toxic adulteration. Others claim they simply shifted control from the baker's bench to the bureaucrat's desk. For you, it feels like both. You stopped using alum long ago. The sickness it caused wasn't worth the pennies saved. But the new requirements, ledgers, labels, monthly inspections, eat your time faster than fire eats dough. Tommy jokes that soon you'll spend more hours writing than baking. You laugh, but it's hollow. Then one afternoon, a young inspector, barely 20, nervous, returns for a follow-up. He doesn't sneer like the others. He looks tired. "Human? Honestly," he says quietly, "half the city's shops are worse than this. But orders are orders." You study him for a moment. "You ever bake a loaf yourself?" He shakes his head. "My father was a clerk." "Then you'll never understand why this flour gets in your lungs and still feels worth it." He looks around the shop, the worn wood, the soot-stained bricks, the lonely courage of survival. "You know," he says, "the city will forget this one day. They'll only remember the big bakeries." You smile faintly. "Maybe. But they'll still taste the difference." When he leaves, he doesn't take a loaf, just nods once and steps back into the fog. Later that week, the fine arrives, a full month's rent. You sit with it for a while before tearing it in half. What's the point of fear when there's no one left to fear for? Tommy reads over your shoulder. "They're bleeding us dry." You shrug. They've always been better at bleeding than baking. That night, the ovens burn hotter than usual, as if sharing your anger. You toss in wood until sparks leap out like small rebellions. You remember a time before all this, before machines, before laws, before inspectors with pens sharp as knives. When baking was art, not compliance. When a loaf could earn trust, not suspicion. Now the city wants perfection, sterility, uniformity. But perfection doesn't feed the soul. It only feeds the ledger. You fall asleep at the work table, head resting on your arm. In your dream, the inspector's ledgers turn into loaves. Flat, flavorless, but stamped with perfect numbers. The people eat them anyway, because they're safe. You wake before dawn and get back to work. Not for laws or ledgers, but for habit. For rhythm. For the small comfort of knowing your bread still breathes. When the first customers arrive, you hand them loaves warm from the oven. No labels, no ledgers, just food. A child bites into hers and laughs, crumbs falling, joy honest. And for a fleeting moment, the empire's rules don't matter at all. You decide, one weary morning, that if bread is dying, perhaps sugar might still save you. A foolish thought, maybe, but hope has always been a kind of madness in your trade. So you borrow what little coin you have left and start experimenting tarts, buns, and candies, all glittering promises of sweetness in a world gone grey. The shop smells different now. Less of yeast and ash, more of caramel and smoke. Children press their noses to the window again, wide-eyed at the trays of iced buns. For the first time in months, laughter drifts through your door like sunlight. But the sweetness has teeth. The sugar you buy arrives from far-off colonies, brown and damp with sweat and salt. You dry it by the fire, never thinking much of where it came from. Historians still argue whether Victorian bakers knew how much blood clung to every grain. But deep down, you suspect you do. You just can't afford to care. One day, a salesman brings you improved pigments for your frostings. Bright blues, vivid reds, soft pinks. Modern chemistry! He boasts. Your pastries will look like jewels. You dip a finger into the sample jar. The color stains your skin an impossible red, like crushed rubies. You lick it, curious, and immediately taste metal. What's in this? You ask. A harmless touch of lead oxide, he says breezily. Perfectly fashionable. Everyone uses it. You don't. At least not that day. But temptation whispers louder with each passing week. Customers crave color now. Spectacle. White icing isn't enough anymore. You try safer dyes, vegetable powders, beet juice, but they fade. And so, reluctantly, you mix a little the leaded red into one batch. Just one. The buns sell out before noon. Tommy notices the rash first. Angry red, creeping across his arms. You tell him it's the heat, maybe flour irritation. But you both know better. By week's end, your lips feel strange, numb, heavy. Your tongue tastes like pennies. You wash your hands more often, but the powders cling, seeping into your skin, your blood. You're not alone. Across the city, pastry cooks and confectioners fall ill. Tremors, fainting, strange hallucinations. One apothecary claims he saw a baker chewing on air, swearing he was eating sugar clouds. It becomes the talk of the trade papers. Mystery malady strikes London bakers. Some blame bad sugar, others cheap colouring. The government blames, on sanitary conditions, of course. Never chemistry, never progress. You read it all with a bitter smile. The irony isn't lost on you. After decades of poison in bread, now even the desserts bite back. And yet, you keep baking. You can't stop. There's something almost divine about transforming chaos into comfort. About creating beauty, even poisonous beauty. One quiet evening, a little girl with coal, dusted cheeks enters the shop. She points to a tray of bright pink tarts. How much? She whispers. You hesitate. Then you give her one for free. She beams, takes a bite, and for a moment, the world feels merciful again. You hope she doesn't eat the icing. Later that night, Tommy sits by the counter, rubbing his arms. You think we're killing people? He asks softly. You pause. Not on purpose. He nods. But we still are. You both laugh, because it's the only sound that keeps despair from settling in. There's a new trend in town. Mirror, glazed pastries. The sheen comes from mercury chloride, or so the travelling chemists claim. Completely safe when baked. They insist. You've heard that one before. Still, curiosity wins. You test it once. The result is beautiful. A tart that gleams like moonlight, smooth as glass. You can see your reflection in it, and the dark circles beneath your eyes. You don't sell that batch. You leave them on the counter until the glaze cracks. The next morning, they've turned an eerie grey, as if mourning themselves. Historians today still can't decide whether Victorian bakers were victims or villains. Some say they were ignorant, others complicit. You think you were just tired, caught between starvation and survival, between morality and rent. When the rash on Tommy's arms begins to blister, you send him home. Rest. You say though rest has never healed anyone in your trade. You keep the ovens running alone for a while. The sweets sell faster than bread ever did. Children still press their faces to the window, and you smile at them, though your teeth ache now, your gums softening from the poison you no longer bother to avoid. At night, you dream of rivers made of sugar, glittering and endless. You reach down to drink, but the water burns. The next morning you wake to find your hands trembling. Still, you bake. Because if the city must eat poison, you'd rather it taste like love. You've started waking before the alarm now, not because of duty, but because your dreams leave you too tired to sleep. They always begin the same way. You're standing in a field far from the city, grass wet against your boots, sunlight soft and yellow. There's no flower, no fire, no weight in your lungs, just air. Then the sound comes, the hiss of the oven door opening, and the field burns away. You blink into the half light of your room, the smell of yeast already clinging to the walls. Tommy doesn't come by much these days. The rash on his arms spread, and he's gone to his sister's in the country to heal. Or so he said. You know what that means. Country air helps no one when the sickness is already in the blood. The bakery feels like an echo without him. You need dough slower now, not for customers, but because motion is the only way to keep your thoughts from sinking. There's a rumor in the neighborhood. A new factory out by the river needs workers. Steady pay, no night shifts, no ovens. You catch yourself thinking about it too often. Imagine standing by water instead of fire, counting crates instead of loaves. A life of anonymity, safety. But safety feels strange when you've spent a lifetime courting danger. That night, you sit by the counter long after the last loaf has cooled. The street outside hums with carriages, steam, voices. London doesn't sleep, it just turns over. You picture the river again, wide, grey, honest. Maybe I'll go, you say out loud, as if testing the thought. The walls don't answer. The next morning, a letter arrives from Tommy. The paper smells faintly of smoke and soap. Don't come here, it reads. The country's not what you think. The air's clean, but the work's the same. Factories everywhere now. Machines even here. You can't run from it. You fold the letter carefully, slip it into the drawer beside your ledger, and go back to kneading. Customers are fewer these days. The new steam bakeries deliver door to door. One woman still comes every Thursday, says your loaves remind her of her husband. He died in the mines. She eats slowly, almost reverently. You never ask for payment. Sometimes, while shaping dough, you catch yourself staring at the door, half expecting Will or Tommy, or anyone to walk in. But the air only shifts, full of flour ghosts, and the soft creak of the oven cooling. One evening, you step outside for the first time in weeks. The city air feels heavier than your kitchen, thick with soot and iron. You walk without aim, following the glow of the river. It's larger than you remembered, wide as memory, dark as regret. A barge drifts past, smoke curling like ribbon. You imagine yourself aboard, disappearing downriver, nameless, unburdened. Historians still argue whether bakers like you ever truly escaped. Some records suggest a few did. Opened inns, joined the railways, even emigrated to Canada or New Zealand. Others simply vanished, swallowed by time and soot. You wonder which story would suit you best. A man near the docks sells passage to Liverpool. From there, he says, ships sail every week to America. Fresh start, he grins. Land of opportunity. You look at your hands, cracked and dusted white. What kind of work there? He shrugs. They'll always need bread. You almost laugh. The thought of starting again, new ovens, new fires, feels like a cosmic joke. But a softer part of you whispers, maybe it wouldn't be the same. That night, you bake one last batch. Simple loaves, no tricks, no poison. You let them rise slow, patient as breathing. The smell fills the street, warm and alive. People stop. Some smile. A child asks if you're leaving, you nod. She looks sad for a moment, then shyly says, "Will you bake there too?" You kneel to her height. "Maybe," you say. "But if I do, I'll make sure the bread remembers this street." The dawn finds you by the door, suitcase in one hand, a single loaf in the other. The shop looks smaller now, almost kind. The oven's cool behind you, sighing softly, as if exiling your name. You take one last look before stepping into the fog. The ship ticket in your pocket feels both heavy and unreal. You've spent your life trapped between hunger and heat, and now you're finally moving towards something else. Freedom, perhaps. Or just another kind of fire. Either way, it's yours to choose. You wake to the sound of rain on the shutters, soft but steady, like the rhythm of dough being kneaded by unseen hands. The ticket to Liverpool sits where you left it, beneath an empty flour sack. You tell yourself you'll leave at dusk, after one more bake. Just one. For closure. For habit. For love, if that's still the word for what keeps you tied to the heat. The fire takes longer to catch now. The wood's damp, your fingers stiff. Every motion feels deliberate, ceremonial, an old priest performing the final rites of his own faith. You mix the dough slow, watching as the flour clouds rise and settle again, soft as snowfall. The smell is familiar, grounding, heartbreakingly kind. This is your last batch. You whisper it aloud, testing the sound. Last batch. The words don't feel real. You've said them before, after Will's accident, after Tommy's sickness, after every new law and machine and heartbreak. And yet you always came back. But this time, there's no one left to bake for except memory. You knead until your shoulders ache. You hum a little tune you half remember from childhood. A lullaby your mother used to sing while hanging laundry. The sound mixes with the rain, the crackle of the oven, the soft breath of the dough rising. The bakery feels alive again for a fleeting moment. When the dough is ready, you shape it into 6 small loaves, each one a story. One for Will, one for Tommy, one for the inspector who looked away, one for the mother who never spoke, one for yourself, and one for the city that never noticed any of you were burning. The oven door creaks open like an old confession. The heat rushes out, wrapping around you in a strange, forgiving embrace. You slide the loaves inside, careful, tender. The hiss of steam sounds almost like applause. You sit by the fire while they bake. Your hands rest on your knees, palms open, skin cracked like old parchment. The flour dust dances in the air, catching the orange light. For a moment, it almost looks holy. The scent builds, warm, nutty, alive. You close your eyes and breathe it in. This smell has been your life, your anchor. You wonder if the new steam bakeries ever smell like this, or if their perfection burns away the soul along with the crust. The clock ticks on. The loaves are ready. You pull them out gently, setting each one on the counter. Their crusts gleam golden, their steam rising in soft ribbons. You tear one open, and the warmth hits your face. It smells like every dawn you ever worked through, every life you ever fed, every dream you buried under exhaustion. You take a bite. It's simple, imperfect, human. Then the cough starts again. The one you've been ignoring for months. It rattles through you, harsh and deep, leaving the taste of metal on your tongue. You wipe your mouth, but the red on your hand isn't flour. You laugh softly, though your voice cracks. Guess it's time. You wrap the loaves in brown paper, one by one. You leave a small sign in the window, free bread. Take what you need. The rain eases as you finish. Outside, the sky lightens into the pale grey of early dawn. The first passerby, a coal worker, face streaked black, stops, stares, then picks up a loaf. He looks through the window, perhaps expecting to see you. You smile faintly, though he can't see it, and he nods once before disappearing into the mist. You sit back down by the oven. The fire's dying, just embers now. You watch the light flicker across the walls, turning them gold, then copper, then shadow. You think about all the hands that shaped this city. The miners, the tailors, the street sweepers, the bakers. None of them remembered by name, but all of them still here, in some quiet way. You imagine the future, a century from now, someone biting into a crusty loaf, not knowing they're tasting ghosts. Historians will argue, as they always do, about the great men, the laws, the progress. They'll forget the nights when flour hung in the air like fog, when men and women built the empire on sleepless backs and burned fingers. They'll forget you. And yet, you think, maybe that's fine. Maybe the bread remembers enough for both of you. The embers glow faintly as your eyes grow heavy. The oven hums like a heartbeat slowing down. The rain returns, soft and steady. You close your eyes, head resting against the warm bricks, and breathe in the last of the scent. It's enough. The rain has stopped by the time dawn unfolds across the soot, smudged skyline. Pale light slides over chimneys and slate rooftops, softening the edges of everything it touches. The city exhales, unaware of the small bakery whose door stands slightly ajar, still smelling faintly of warmth and ash. You're gone now, though your chair by the oven remains pulled close to the dying embers. A few crumbs sit on the counter, a scatter of flour dust on the floor. Nothing dramatic, nothing tragic, just stillness, the kind that feels earned. Outside, the sign still flaps in the breeze, free bread. Take what you need. A pair of children stop first, their hands small, their eyes wide. They take a loaf each, giggling as the crust crackles under their fingers. They don't know your name. They don't need to. The warmth will do. A few others follow. An old man with a bent spine, a young seamstress on her way to work, a chimney boy blackened to the elbows. They break bread together without a word. For once, the city tastes kindness before the day begins. Inside, the oven cools. Its bricks sigh softly, the last ghost of heat drifting up the flue. The tools on the bench, peel, bowl, scale, are arranged neatly, waiting for hands that will never return. But the smell lingers, clinging to the air like memory, refusing to fade. Word travels slowly. By afternoon, someone mentions the old baker who never woke. Someone else says they saw him smiling the night before, sitting in the window light. There's talk of reopening the place, maybe turning it into a community bakehouse, maybe not. The city moves on, as it always does. But the idea, warm bread, shared freely, sticks. A seed in soot. Decades later, historians will argue whether that anonymous baker existed at all, or whether his story was a metaphor for the changing tides of Victorian industry. Some claim to have found his ledger, marked with sketches of loaves and little notes, add more yeast. Cooler fire next time, still coughing. Others insist the legend began as a folk tale told among factory workers about the man who baked until the end. Either way, the story survives longer than the ovens did. 100 years pass, the streets renamed. The factories close, new shops open, then close again. And still, on misty mornings, when the air is damp and heavy, locals swear they can smell bread baking from nowhere at all. Some even say the scent lingers longest outside what used to be your bakery. No one knows that, on your final night, you smiled when the fire dimmed, that you felt no fear, Only the soft hum of the city settling, the weight lifting from your chest. You'd done your last batch right. No shortcuts, no fear, no regrets. And if anyone could have heard your thoughts, they might have caught a whisper, just the faintest one, about how strange it is that the simplest things last the longest. Bread, kindness, a story told before sleep. The city keeps moving, but the world you helped feed carries on. Somewhere, a new baker wipes flour from their face and steps into morning light. Somewhere, a tired worker breaks open a roll still steaming from the oven. Somewhere, a storyteller begins. Hey guys, tonight we. And though they don't know your name, they feel what you left behind. A trace of warmth in a cold age, the proof that even in soot and danger, something soft and human can rise. You rest easy now. The oven's gone quiet. The rain has stopped. The city hums on. And now, as the lights of the Victorian city fade from view, your breathing slows. The last curls of steam drift into darkness, carrying the smell of baked bread and coal dust away. You can almost hear the quiet rhythm of footsteps on wet cobblestone, the distant clatter of a horse cart, the sigh of a kettle left on the boil, the noise of work, of hardship, of life. It all fades until only the heartbeat of the story remains. You can feel it in your chest, steady and calm. You survived another long night, and somewhere out there, the world keeps turning, just as it always has. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Feel the gentle pull of sleep like a tide returning to shore. The world of iron and flour recedes, and all that's left is warmth. The kind that comes from a loaf shared, or a memory kept alive by telling it once more. Tomorrow, there will be new stories, new cities, new hands shaping tomorrow's bread. But for now, there's nothing more to do. Just breathe, rest, and let the quiet settle around you like soft flour dust in a sunbeam. Sweet dreams.